I'm Bob Bakert. We're here with Davy Mooney for section 3 of our discussion about his book Into the Labyrinth. I'm not going to make Davy go back over who he is and what he's done, because we did that in section 1, and hopefully you've seen section 1, you've seen section 2, and now you can see section 3. And so what is the third leg? You're talking about the 3 legs, Davy. What is the third leg that you were discussing about your system?
Great, because we don't want the stool to fall over. So yeah, another thing that especially when I started to get into college here, I went to UNT. I started improvising over these tunes in all eighth notes, like it's slow tempos. So for instance, if we took a tune, we've been talking about Lady Bird, a Ted Dameron song, I would sit there with my metronome real slow and, like, for instance, go, Actually got a good one. Yeah, sometimes I'll demonstrate it. It's kind of hard to do, but
let me stop you there for 1 second. What you just did was you arpeggiated your way through all the changes of the song.
Well, yeah,
for the most part.
For the most part, with some chromatic passing tones, some scale passages, and that's interesting that you say that, because yes, in this area of the neck, I have very specific, at this point in my life, shapes that I use beyond. We've talked about scale shapes and arpeggio shapes. It's gotten even more sort of specific for me. So if I'm right here and a C major 7 happens, I'm going to play off of this.
Right.
And yeah, that's on a C major 7 arpeggio, and in different areas of the neck, I'll use a different, very specific shape. And in the book, I actually write those out in neck diagrams, because as I got further down the rabbit hole of, like, hey, what am I actually doing? The first chapter I talk about what I did when I was younger, and, like, where am I at right now? And it's like, if I'm right here and that chord comes,
right.
And if I'm here and that chord comes, and if I'm here, I'm here. So I write all that out in the book for each position. But the improvising in all eighth notes, I used to do it a lot, and so I developed a muscle memory in my left hand of how many eighth notes it would take to get from one chord tone to the next.
Right. So if I may, for those of you who are kind of new to this thing, what Davy just demonstrated is not easy to do.
Yeah.
It's keeping it's not easy. It looks easy because he makes it look easy. It is not easy to do. And you did it beautifully. The idea behind all this, there's a lot of ideas, but one of the central ideas to this is that we as the listener can hear the chord changes, even though no chords are changing. The chords are changing from the chord tones that he's playing, outlining thirds, sevenths, and all of that, to give us an idea of the chord movement through single lines. And I got to tell you, that's not easy to do, but it's essential. I spent a lot of hours, in the studio doing that exact same thing. Yeah. And it's not easy to do, but it's essential to get that skill together. So what you're listening to, go back and listen to that again, is you're listening to him playing through the chord changes, so that we as the listener can actually hear the chord changes, even though there's no polyphonic, there's no harmony going on at all. It's very, very well done. And that's in the book.
Yeah. For each chord progression, I have 5 of those, like one for each chunk of the neck. So there's, I get my math messed up. There's 25 of them, right? Yeah. And, I did improvise them initially. I remember I filmed myself doing it, and every now and then I change, I wanted to make them sort of more perfect since they were
Right.
etudes. But to accompany that in each position, so I have a one chorus all eighth note etude, and then I also improvise a chorus.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that in the studio with the backing band. We have all the tracks, and I analyze it. But beyond that, as I was saying, I go through and I try to be real thorough and real honest about what I'm actually basing the improvisation off of. The fact that, yeah, okay, well, there's the C major shape that I learned in 1993, and there's the arpeggio shape I learned in 1994. Here in 2022, it's like I'm doing this, and all that comes from this, and it's just connected by chromatic or scale notes, and I've developed a muscle memory in my left hand to where I can just do that all day.
Mm-hmm.
And that was different than the one I just did, but it's still this.
So I know this is going to sound really, really silly, and for the people out there that that already are way past this, and there's many of them, but for the new guy, when you use the term chromatic, there are people out there that really don't know what you're talking about. And so you want to just say what that means when you say I'm using a chromaticism.
Yeah.
What are you doing when you're using chromaticism?
Sure. So, I guess the opposite would be in the key of C, the notes that are diatonic to C are, C, D, E, F, G, A, B.
Right.
And then all the other notes are the chromatic notes,
The non-scalar notes of the key. So diatonic simply means those are the notes in the key.
That's the way I use the term.
That's the way I use it too. That's why
chromatic would be, just all 12 notes.
All the other ones combined with all the other ones.
And the trick, to me, the beauty of a lot of jazz playing is that mixture of chromaticism and the more consonant notes, or the consonant notes of playing the arpeggio. If a chord's a C major and you arpeggiate a C major chord, it sounds good. But if you get to mix in those dissonant notes, that's kind of the beauty and the mystery of it for me, of the music. It makes it so fascinating.
Yeah, and the thing that I always mess with when I'm in that mood is that each one of those notes, if you can relate it to some chord, like oftentimes it's for example, the B note is also the third of the five. If you're playing, or the B, the B flat could be this, everything's related to something. It's maybe it's a flat 5 or a flat 9 of the 5 chord or whatever. You started to understand, well, why do these things work? Why do these things work? Well, because we're playing a 2-5-1. It just doesn't sound like one. But if you understand what that chord is to the 5 or to the 2, then that's where all this goes. So all those notes actually do make sense. They're not mistakes. Well, you can make mistakes, but they do make sense. You just have to understand why they make sense and train your ear to have them make sense. You just don't wake up one morning and say, hey, I think I didn't anyway. I like pizza, because I wanted to eat the same, sugar water or whatever it was I was eating, or to get your ear becomes more sensitive to more complex sounds, and it likes those complex sounds, and that's basically what we're talking about here. So that's very, very cool. I didn't mean to over explain your concept, but we're trying to, we're trying to draw people into this genre that, they're just, they're new to this, and we don't want to. So many people talk way over their heads. They don't understand. Well, I don't want to hear that shit. I'm going to put that down.
Yeah, and I sort of skipping, in the book, it was many years of toil and practice and suffering. It's not just like I learned this one day, I learned this the next day, and then I was improvising all eighth notes next week. It was like, it takes time.
Took me a year to get Waltz for Debbie together, and I still screw it up. It took me a long time to get that together. I mean, to where I wanted to actually perform. There's some of the stuff but in that learning process, I was able to take some things that I learned and apply them to other things that I already knew. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm going, okay, all right, well, I can, and you get that. And then, so all of this, even if it's going to take you, I mean, that's a lot of work you got in that book.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah,
It's like
it'll keep it.
100 over 100
Yeah,
pages.
it'll keep a guy or a girl busy for a long time
Yeah.
if you're going to try to get your mind around that.
And it's all solid,
Yep.
shapes and notes. And there's explanatory text, but a lot of chord diagrams. I try to be real thorough. Like I said, if I write the etude, I wanted to go through
Right. And
everything.
again, you're one of our contributors, and your email is listed, in our in the
Mhm.
website, and among our contributors. And if people wanted to contact you, they could write you an email or something and say, Davey, on page 37, you know,
What are you
what
talking about?
what are you talking about?
What's wrong with you?
Were you drinking that day, or what, was it a bad night, or did you kick the dog, or what what happened there? But
Well,
you are somewhat accessible. I mean, within
yeah,
reason.
very accessible. Yeah,
Yeah, and
I've had emails about the book already. I've been trying to, I try to write
yeah.
people back.
Well, it's an honor for us, and to have you as part of our contributing staff, if you will. And it really is. I mean, because just for a lot of reasons. So we're thrilled. And I don't want to, the two books together. If you get those two books and you spend time putting those things into your head, you don't need anything else, to be honest with you. I mean, it's always good to get, information from a lot of places, but spend some time with those two books and you will, you'll be a badass if you master that stuff. And I use that term, master, but it's, there's a lot going on there. And whenever I bought a book, and I've got a library full of them, whenever I bought a book, I always thought, if I get 3 things from this book, I'm way ahead of the game. If I get 2 things from this book, I'm ahead of the game. If I get 1 thing from this book, I paid for the book. I'm happy, So, maybe you won't get everything that's on page 67 or 68 or 69. But if you really grasp that first chapter, you have improved your playing a ton, and well worth the price of admission. So, Davey, is there anything else you want to say to people before we call it a day on this chapter of our journey together?
No, I think you covered it, Bob. Like I said, those two books are a very thorough explanation of my personal. So these books are very personal to me. They're as personal to me as the albums that I make musically,
Right.
and I try to be very honest and explain what I did to
Yeah.
be able to play the way I play. So
So let's.
they
I'm
cover it.
sorry. So we got the new book,
Mhm.
and your latest recording is what?
Well, the latest one is live at National Sawdust on Sunnyside Records. I did this we recorded this end of January 2020, right before the lockdown with Brian
Yeah.
Blade and John Coward, John Ellis, Matt Closey. So it was kind of almost ironic to have the live record right before the nobody played live for a
A
year.
long time.
But I just recorded a new record, so that's it's tracked. I have to mix and master and all that other stuff, but. So there's a new one coming.
What's the name of that? We know.
I think it's going to be called Way Back. And the people that I recorded with on it, I go way back with them. And I was thinking, I'm trying to search in for a way back to the way my life was before the pandemic. I'm getting there. And there's a tune called Way Back. And then it was funny because we recorded at this studio outside of Sao Paulo in Brazil that was
Right.
way back in the woods. And so I was
Right.
like, it's another way back. So
Another
there's
way back.
multiple.
Well,
meanings.
people don't, and maybe they do appreciate, again, in my day, and boy, I hate to, if I say that phrase one more time, I'm gonna hit myself. But the truth of the matter is that there was no accessibility to artists like yourself in those days. Nobody. I mean, you could not get a hold of somebody. You could not listen to them explain what they do, how they go about it. The fact that, colleges and universities have a guitar department with a guy playing jazz guitar. When I was coming along, you studied classical guitar, which of course spoke with nobody else in the music department because classical guitar wasn't, incorporated into any of the other programs. Because I spent a little time there as well. And the fact that a guy of your caliber is as accessible as you are is tremendous. So we appreciate that. So it's Bob Bakert with Davy Mooney and his new book, a new record, all around cool guy. I don't know what else to say about you. You're a great dad. You know, I've heard you brag about that. So
I do my best.
you know, it's all any of
Really
us
can,
ever. It's all any of us ever can do. I'll give you my little piece of fatherly advice, because I'm a father of four and a grandfather of four.
Four.
They're only that age today,
Yeah.
because tomorrow they're going to be somebody else. And
change.
I can speak. My oldest daughter is older than you, so yeah, I can speak from experience on that one. So you have to grab every day with your kids and just say, wow, I'm going to take a mental snapshot of that one, you know, every day, because it'll get past you. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you so much. Bob Bakert with Davy Mooney for Jazz Guitar Today. Y'all have a wonderful day. Get the book, spend some time with it. It'll be well worth your time. Thanks, guy. See you now.